August 19, 1944. Across the battle-scarred fields of northern France, the momentum of war hung precariously in balance. General Oberst Alfred Jodl, stationed at the Wehrmacht headquarters in East Prussia, pored over intelligence reports with grim determination. The Western Front was collapsing, and the numbers told a story that seemed almost impossible. Allied forces had surged from Normandy with a ferocity that defied prior expectations. The Third Army, under General George S. Patton, had advanced hundreds of miles in mere weeks, stretching the supply lines dangerously thin. Jodl and his staff calculated the mathematics of logistics with meticulous precision. Armored divisions required 150,000 gallons of fuel daily, and infantry divisions demanded 700 tons of supplies every day. The Americans were now 400 miles from their initial supply depots, and German doctrine dictated that such speed without resupply inevitably led to paralysis. From his vantage point in Hitler's Wolf's Lair headquarters, Jodl assumed the American advance would stall within days, perhaps hours. The calculations were neat, predictable, and seemingly incontrovertible. Yet mere miles away, an audacious plan was already in motion that would rewrite every assumption of mechanized warfare. By August 25, 1944, 5,958 trucks rumbled eastward in a continuous convoy, headlights piercing the dusk, carrying 12,500 tons of supplies every 24 hours. The operation was unprecedented in scale and daring. It was called the Red Ball Express, a name borrowed from railway terminology, an express shipment granted absolute priority, designed to override every bureaucratic, tactical, or procedural obstacle. Within 3 days of the operation's start, Patton's forces, which the Germans had considered immobilized, surged forward, breaking through German positions and liberating cities with a speed previously thought impossible. Within a week, Paris was free, and within a month, American tanks and infantry stood on Germany's doorstep. The Wehrmacht's most seasoned generals were forced to confront a reality that defied every tenet of their military training. The Americans were supplying their forces faster than the Germans could disrupt them, and they were doing it with a predominantly African-American workforce, in a segregated army, operating at speeds and efficiency the German high command could scarcely imagine. The German military had long understood the tyranny of supply lines. In Russia, the Wehrmacht's advances had repeatedly faltered, not solely because of Soviet resistance, but because logistics failed to keep pace. Trucks broke down, railways failed, horses could not match the speed of panzer spearheads, and fuel was a constant limiting factor. General Heinrich von Luttwitz, commanding a panzer corps, had foreseen that American mechanical advantages might become a disadvantage. In July 1944, he wrote, "History teaches us what comes next: paralysis." Yet the Americans would soon demonstrate that their industrial power and organizational innovation could overturn these assumptions. Whereas the Germans had learned to ration, conserve, and adhere rigidly to military procedure, the Americans created redundancy, improvised continuously, and relied on volume and speed rather than caution and concealment. By August 25th, Lieutenant Colonel Laurent Ayers of the Motor Transport Service convened with a room of skeptical officers in a requisitioned French chateau near Leh. They faced a stark reality. Traditional supply methods had collapsed under Patton's advance. Railways were damaged, roads were destroyed, and no existing doctrine could account for the sheer scale of resources required. Ayers announced a radical solution: a one-way highway system, 20 hours of continuous operation for every truck, minimal stops, and a relentless focus on tonnage delivery. Mobile maintenance units would patrol every 50 miles, ensuring no vehicle fell below the operational minimum. The American logistics planners demanded nothing less than perfection through sheer repetition and volume. The Germans were stunned. No military textbook had ever prescribed such a method, and yet within 36 hours the operation was operational, moving thousands of tons of fuel, ammunition, and rations toward Patton's advancing forces. The drivers of the Red Ball Express were remarkable in every sense. Of the 23,000 men eventually employed, approximately 75% were African-American soldiers serving in a segregated army. They faced discrimination at home, yet here they were, propelling the most celebrated army in the world across enemy territory with extraordinary skill and endurance. They created their own culture within hours, painting slogans on trucks, improvising traffic rules, and pushing mechanical systems far beyond their nominal capacities. Any truck below 20 miles per hour was treated as a roadblock. Damaged vehicles were abandoned or pushed to the roadside, and drivers continued without pause. By August 28th, German reconnaissance units reported convoys stretching 20 kilometers, moving in continuous waves with no spacing, no concealment, and no apparent fear of attack. From a German military perspective, the Americans were violating every principle of warfare. Lights were on at night, vehicles followed one another in relentless columns, and the sheer number of trucks overwhelmed conventional thought. The Americans, however, relied not on caution, but on relentless volume and redundancy. Mechanical failures were expected and incorporated into planning. Fuel was never in short supply, thanks to Operation Pluto, the underwater pipeline supplying gasoline directly across the English Channel. Within the first week, the Red Ball Express delivered nearly 90,000 tons of supplies, maintaining an average of 12,848 tons daily. German observers were confounded. Vehicles rotated efficiently, maintenance units repaired 1,800 breakdowns daily, and improvisation became standard practice. Truck drivers commandeered French buses for personnel movement, borrowed German vehicles, and even built bypasses around destroyed bridges in mere hours. The Americans seemed to treat impossibility as an invitation rather than a limitation. Fuel management alone stunned German engineers. 300,000 gallons consumed daily to support supply operations, yet the system never faltered. Forward fuel dumps were established at 25-mile intervals, and tanker trucks operated in parallel to ensure no stoppages. The Germans, accustomed to careful planning and the preservation of resources, watched in disbelief as the Americans transformed chaos into efficiency. The Red Ball Express was not merely moving supplies, it was creating an entirely new logistical paradigm. By September, the scale of the operation intensified. Forward units received artillery shells, ammunition, medical supplies, and rations in volumes far exceeding what German intelligence had calculated. Artillery units could fire continuously, with 100,000 rounds delivered in a single day during the reduction of Metz's fortifications. The Red Ball Express supplied not only Patton's infantry and armored divisions, but also the operational tempo that allowed the Third Army to advance 40 to 60 miles per day, double what German doctrine considered sustainable. The psychological effect on the German forces was profound. Soldiers could hear trucks all night, their engines roaring endlessly. The Americans were not merely moving material, they were projecting industrial might and individual determination, a demonstration of power the Wehrmacht could not counter. German officers reported ghost convoys, phantom vehicles moving in the night, and widespread despair as they realized that the Americans could supply faster than the Germans could destroy. The African-American drivers of the Red Ball Express understood the historical significance of their work. Every mile driven challenged Nazi racial ideology. They faced exhaustion, mechanical failure, and hostile weather, yet morale remained extraordinarily high. Drivers operated for 72 straight hours, pushed by benzodrine and determination, facing fatal accidents yet continuing to deliver vital supplies. Their heroism reshaped the perception of African-American soldiers within the U.S. military. Eisenhower himself observed the operation in September and noted that these men were winning the war as surely as any infantry. Their success laid the groundwork for post-war desegregation and proved the transformative power of opportunity and capability. German attempts to replicate the Red Ball Express failed immediately. Operation Greif during the Battle of the Bulge sought to create similar supply lines with captured American trucks. German drivers could not maintain the speed, mechanics could not repair the vehicles fast enough, and fuel supplies were insufficient. The underlying American advantage, the combination of industrial surplus and individual initiative, was irreproducible. Even in the winter of 1944 to 45, freezing rain and ice could not halt the Red Ball Express. Drivers wrapped chains on tires, poured alcohol in radiators, and maintained convoys despite extreme cold, demonstrating adaptability and resilience far beyond German expectations. The total impact of the Red Ball Express was staggering. Over 82 days of operation, 412,000 tons of supplies were delivered across 122 million ton-miles. Approximately 5,958 vehicles were employed daily, with peaks of 7,000 trucks in motion. Drivers totaled 23,000, Fuel consumption reached 700,000 gallons daily, and over 5,000 vehicles were destroyed or abandoned without slowing operations. Ammunition, rations, medical supplies, and fuel flowed seamlessly, keeping Patton's Third Army advancing, while German forces faced depletion and despair. German generals recognized the truth. The Americans had not been defeated by combat tactics, but by industrial capacity and logistical excellence. The Red Ball Express became a weapon of strategy, not merely support. The operation shortened the war by an estimated 6 months, saving countless lives and demonstrating that in modern industrial warfare, logistics determined victory. The Red Ball Express's influence extended far beyond the battlefield. Thousands of returning drivers applied their skills to civilian logistics, founding trucking companies, designing interstate highways, and creating the modern American freight industry. Military historians universally recognize the operation as a decisive element in Allied success. Without it, Patton's advance would have slowed, Paris would have fallen weeks later, and German forces might have established defensive lines that prolonged the war. In every sense, the Red Ball Express exemplified the principle that industrial capacity, human determination, and innovative logistics could overcome even the most formidable tactical opposition.